Let's get started. So good morning again, and a very warm welcome everyone to this webinar organized by the Singapore Business Federation, McKinsey & Company, and Ernst & Young on digital operations, and in particular digital operations in the new normal. It's our pleasure to have so many of you joining us, and I hope that you will find the roughly 2-hour session helpful as you're thinking forward on how to make the most of digitization and as you emerge from the COVID crisis. If we go to the next page before we get onto introductions, we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping. So during the session, of course, you might have questions regarding the content that is being presented, and we have effectively a channel for you to be able to post your questions via the chat. All the thing you need to do is basically click on the chat button that is on the bottom of your screen and select the person called Samantha XH Tan and post your questions to her. She will then field the questions to the speakers, and we're more than happy to answer them at the various Q&A points during the webinar. The second element, if you have any technical issue and you need any technical support, please ask Vicky Zhao, another of our hosts, using the same chat function. Right? So Vicky Zhao for technical questions and Sam XH Tan for content questions. In order to help with the flow of the presentation, please do stay on mute when not speaking. We have a lot of people in the room, maybe even more after. So that will just make it easier. And no recording of the sessions permitted, though we are doing some recording, and we'll be very happy to share some of the extracts back if that is helpful to anyone. And so again, very, very warm welcome. If we go to the next page, let me quickly introduce the agenda and the presenter. So my name is Alpesh Patel. I am a partner in McKinsey Singapore office and the leader of our digital capability centers in Asia. Today, I'm accompanied by a few colleagues. Jonathan Ng is our chief executive running our digital capability center in Singapore, together with Mayank Agrawal, who is leading the developments done on Industry 4.0 in that center. Two other colleagues, Ting Feng Ye as a project manager of the Industry 4.0 Human Capital Initiative program, and Kenneth Ko, the director of the same program, are also joining us. And then we have the utmost pleasure to have Joy Seo, Group Executive Director of Watson EP, who took part to the Industry 4.0 Human Capital Initiative and will share some of her experience. As we highlighted, we also have our friends from the Singapore Business Federation, Workforce Singapore, and Ernst & Young, William and Joanne from the Singapore Business Federation. You can see them. And before we get started, I would just have Joanne say a couple of words for our attention. Please, Joanne.
Okay. So thank you, Alpesh. The current COVID-19 situation has shown that it's very important for companies to digitalize, not only to deal with the situation, but also to emerge stronger. So this is why we have teamed up with McKinsey as well as Ernst & Young to organize this particular webinar to share more insights with you, and also to share more about our Industry 4.0 Human Capital Initiative, one of our landmark programs that we have teamed up with McKinsey, Ernst & Young, as well as WSG and many other government agencies and trade associations and chambers on. So we hope that you will find this session useful, as well as if you are interested, please contact us to sign up for the Industry 4.0 Human Capital Initiative. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Alpesh to bring us through the rest.
Thank you, Joanne. And I just followed my screen to also introduce one colleague, Kang Jan Lo, is one of our IoT engineers in the center, and will be running some of the presentations later on. Apologies for that, Kang Jan. So let's get going. And what we have, I'll do a very quick tee up onto why are we doing this webinar, why Industry 4.0 is important in this current context, and in the context where most of US manufacturers are grappling with the COVID crisis. And then my colleagues will continue through an immersion session and then an introduction through to the Industry 4.0 Human Capital Initiative program that Joan just quickly talked about. And then we'll highlight some experiences that companies have had through this program towards the end of the webinar. So if we get started with page number 7, so why is this important? I mean, we all know right now these are unusual times. It's a time of webinars, and why are we all doing webinars? Is because we are not able, unfortunately, to do a lot of these meetings in person. The COVID crisis is there, and I think what it translates in general and has been a spike, of course, in terms of the number of cases as the epidemic has become a pandemic, and governments around the world have tried to suppress the virus as fast as possible. But doing so involves, just like in Singapore, the implementation of circuit breaker type of measures. And what these circuit breaker measures tend to do is basically affecting the economy. And this is basically what is represented, right? The white line is basically the number of cases that you need to suppress as quickly as possible. But as a result, the blue line shows the economic impact. And there is a strong dip and strong challenges as companies need to grasp the crisis and then prepare to get back to work safely. And even as they get back to work safely, there are a number of disruptions in supply chain or on the shop floor that need to be managed, and therefore the path to recovery is fairly long. If we move on to the next page, we run typically a survey across CEOs worldwide, and this survey has been done month after month after month, and you can see the numbers from April, May, June, and then July, right? So we have the latest results from July, and it really shows that the crisis is not going anywhere. It's really here to stay. What you see on this graph, right, on the vertical axis, is basically how do we think about the virus spread and the public health response. From the top, it's basically, if you think that the response is going to be rapid and the virus will be controlled, your answers come, at the top. In the middle, it's effective, but you have regional resurgence, and at the bottom, a broad public failure of the health interventions. And on the horizontal axis, we are looking more at the effect of the economic policy response, so the stimulus packages. From the left, it's ineffective; to the right, highly effective. So what CEOs think worldwide is that, well, broadly speaking, we are in the scenario A1, which is really midpoint. So partially effective economic interventions to stem the crisis, but some resurgence of the virus on a regional basis. And this is what we're already seeing with cases spiking up again in some countries, both in Europe as well as in Northern Asia. And we, of course, all cross the fingers that things will remain under control in Singapore. But as it is happening in other regions, for sure, there is an impact on manufacturing operations here and on the supply chains worldwide. Right? Most CEOs think we are on A1, and then you can see that actually a few of them, right, and nearly the same amount, thinks that the economic interventions will be ineffective. Fortunately, no one yet thinks that the public health interventions will be ineffective, right? So the CEOs that think that economic interventions are ineffective typically think that either the virus will be properly controlled or that there will be regional resurgence, but not a broad failure of public institutions. That's I would say the current consensus. We keep the situation closely monitored, but what it means is, broadly speaking, I think no one thinks that this is going away anytime soon. It is there to stay, and therefore we need to learn to live with the virus. Going to the next page, also wanted to give a little bit of a sense at what does that mean for the economy, and this actually is a little bit of a more optimistic scenario. It was scenario A3, where we compared basically Singapore with the rest of the world, and you can see that actually while China, of course, recovers before the rest of the world as they went through the pandemic before, Singapore typically tends to lag a little bit its neighbors and tends to be in line with the rest of the world. And that's mainly due to both the fact that we are an open economy and that there is a huge impact, of course, on tourism and trade flows, which some other countries and regions are less sensitive to. So it's a very important, of course, crisis that needs to be tackled. If we get onto the next page, what is important is also looking into what is going to happen as we get out of the crisis, right? Because we can keep our heads into the issues that are being faced right now, but it's also important to try to understand what is coming next. And we always think about the way to navigate the crisis as really a time, basically a response that is adapted to various phases. We call this the 5 R's. So I think when the crisis started, companies would mainly focus on response, basically being quick to respond to the health crisis and take the emergency measures that are required. It then moves on to the return, which basically how to prepare, the exit from circuit breaker and how to restart safely some of the operations if they have been stopped or have been affected. And then I think towards the let's say the forward-looking view, we call this reimagine and potentially reform. So basically, how can you rethink your company? How can you rethink your operations? And the 18 trends you see here have been collected again from discussions with experts around the world, and these are trends that could shape the world that we see post-COVID. And you can see that one of those 18 trends, I give you the time to read through, but really one of them at the top left is related to digitization. And that is one important trend. It's something that is absolutely undisputable. We are seeing it already coming in various countries, in various locations. We see this acceleration of the adoption of technology by businesses. And it's either to reduce the dependence on the need to work on site, or it's to increase transparency and visibility as supply chains have been disrupted. But no matter what, the adoption of digital technology is accelerating on the B2B side as well as the B2C side, where you can see e-commerce and e-services growing as well, right? So the trend on digitization is very, very clear, and it is not a slowing down. It's actually an acceleration that we're seeing. And of course, that's why we're here today. So before I move on to talking about Industry 4.0, what I wanted to do is maybe ask for a quick poll. Basically, you have, I think Vicky will activate the poll function in a second. What I wanted to ask is, as manufacturers, what are the top challenges that you are facing with respect to COVID-19? And we give you a few choices here: material shortage, so issues in basically supplying the raw materials for production. A worker shortage, so basically inability to get maybe some of the workers stranded on the other side of the border or not able to come to work. Cash flow issues, planning issues, so basically being able to have some visibility both on supply and demand, or I think a drop in demand just because the virus has just wiped out demand in the sectors, in the client sectors of yours. So we'll leave a few seconds for you to vote before we close the poll. We have roughly 40 people have voted so far. I will leave it maybe another 20 seconds to try and get a few more people to vote. Again, any technical issue, please send a note via the chat to Vicky. She can help you if needed. And another 10 seconds. All right, perfect. Vicky, can you close the poll and display the results to the attendants? So thank you very much for voting. So we had 53 responses, and most of you, I think over nearly 2/3, are seeing a significant drop in demand, which basically affects, of course, the pace and of your operations. Many of you are facing planning issues, supply or demand planning, as well as worker shortages, right? Which, of course, would affect directly the shop floor operations and the ability to conduct those at the relevant pace. Cash flow issues by a little bit less than a third, which are also, of course, one of the key elements that typically strike companies in this type of crisis. And then a minority, but still a few of you facing material shortages. So thank you very much for that. And it definitely shows that the challenges faced by manufacturers can be very, very diverse. If we move on to the next page, and let's contrast a little bit the results of the poll to what we've seen. We've run this this survey with companies across Asia. And actually, what's interesting is that most of them were seeing material shortages or disruptions in the supply chain. So it's good to see that appears to be broadly under control, at least in this attendance. On the other hand, the drop in demand, just as you pointed it out, was also pointed out by companies across Asia, and the worker shortages as well as really big issues. Cash flow and planning coming behind, right? So I think one big difference, material shortages, but then in terms of drop in demand and worker shortages, pretty much in line with what we've seen in other countries in an Asia-wide survey that we've run a month ago or so. And what you can see, I think, when highlighting the material shortage and worker shortage is what is the impact, right? On the material shortage, I think roughly a fifth of the companies that signaled it as a big problem highlighted that it is major. On the worker shortage, a lot of the companies highlighted that productivity could be impacted. More than half said impacted between 10 and 30%, and about a fifth saying that it could be impacted by more than 30%. So definitely very significant issues that manufacturers are facing, and you're not alone. I think manufacturers in Asia in general are facing the same issues. And if we move on to the next page, that basically highlights a little bit why we're doing this long intro to Industry 4.0. It's because Industry 4.0 can really help companies gain productivity faster and move it back faster to original level, even with the issues that they face in terms of planning or in terms of worker shortages. And some example of use cases that we are starting to see being implemented both in large and small companies are on this page, right? So digital performance management is one of them, basically sensorizing your line or leveraging your PLCs to basically collect information, visualize it to conduct the relevant analysis and drive performance dialogue in a more effective way, ultimately allows to find process improvements and therefore the productivity improvements that you can do even with disrupted worker availability, as well as potentially issues with planning. Another example, as you highlighted, issues in terms of planning is the autonomous planning to identify demand changes. And that basically uses algorithms to improve the demand forecasting, and therefore allows you to understand whether there are spikes or decreases of demand, as well as some of the specific inputs that are required for you to run your operation. Right. So these are two cases where digital really comes to help. I think there are others that you can see on this page that we are seeing being adopted across manufacturers in Asia. And so that brings us a little bit to Industry 4.0, right? So 6 use cases, but then if we step back a little bit into what Industry 4.0 is about on the next page, is really the use of 4 foundational technologies: data, analytics, human-machine interaction, which is automation and augmented and virtual reality, as well as advanced engineering. It's the confluence of those 4 broad technologies applied along the value chain that allows you to derive the relevant use cases that can help you improving the productivity. And I think what we have seen there are two elements that I'd like to highlight. If we go to page number 15, is first that it can have a very big impact. I think the success stories of impact are becoming more and more well known, well documented, and I think Fung later on will talk about a few examples. So more and more players are doing it. The impact of adoption has been proven in that there are now case examples of companies having achieved 200% productivity increase, either in the form of quality increase or throughput increase or labor productivity increase. And then the third fact is that small and medium companies have also started on their journey towards the digital transformation. And that to me is extremely important because it is not only for the big guys. It is possible to start implementing Industry 4.0 in a small and medium company setting and get a payback of a couple of months, and therefore being able to get started on digital transformation and resolve some of the pain points that you have highlighted in the poll that you were facing due to COVID. I will close with the next page, saying that it's probably quite important to get started on digitization now. And you know already from the 18 trends, the digitization is accelerating. If we go specifically on the Industry 4.0 technologies, we are definitely seeing an acceleration, but also this acceleration is becoming asymmetric. So what this complex heat map is showing to you is we basically look at companies from their technology infrastructure point of view, what they have implemented before the crisis. There are companies that haven't implemented Industry 4.0 yet before COVID crisis hit, or had some basic installation, and then companies that had already done some advanced installation. What we are seeing is that the companies that have done some advanced installation, so they have an IoT platform that connects with their manufacturing execution system, what we see is that they are very, very quick to digitize now because they have the foundational architecture, and they can then easily bolt use case after use case, right? Digital work instructions, digital performance management, operator assistance through augmented reality. That is a real big hit right now. Condition-based monitoring for equipment, advanced analytics for operations, digital twin. They are really going to full-fledged implementation, and this is really accelerating. On the other hand, companies that didn't have the foundational technology before the COVID crisis hit are starting to get on with the implementation, but at a much slower pace. And that's basically asymmetry is quite a danger because it basically means that there is a risk of being left behind if you don't get started with the journey. And really that is why the Industry 4.0 is more relevant than ever and is more important than ever to get started because asymmetry will lead to big competitive discrepancies between the companies that are doing it and those that are not doing it. Those that were doing it before the crisis are accelerating, and these can be both large or small companies. If even small companies that have done their homework before are accelerating now, right? So that really is the message I would leave you with for the introduction. The crisis has hit, it has impacted companies, you in a very similar way to the Asian companies we've surveyed. Industry 4.0 can help, but it's also important to get started now as we are seeing that asymmetry of adoption coming in, and it could be a key determinant of competitiveness in the future. On this note, I will let my colleagues, Jonathan, Mayank, and KJ, to lead you through the next session on the immersion session with our Digital Capability Center. Jonathan, over to you.